Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for CEO Exclusive, brought to you by Anona Enterprises.
Good morning and welcome to CEO Exclusive, where we get emerging trends from CEOs and their most trusted advisors. I'm your host, Soyini Koch. So if you've been listening to CEO Exclusive for the past year, you've been hearing about this movement in business and elevating consciousness through business that we've been talking about throughout the past few months. And I'm really delighted to have on today's show two very prominent Atlanta businessmen who are really kind of on the forefront of this movement and kind of growing it and turning it not into just kind of this emerging trend, but to be the norm in business. So I'm delighted to have on today's show Rick Jackson from Jackson Healthcare and Eric Tanenblatt from Denton's, the largest law firm in the country and in the world. So, gentlemen, I'm really delighted to have you on today's show.
Thank you.
So, share with us what this trend that you see that's happening in business, and kind of what your participation is in it, and why you think it's so important.
Well, for Jackson Healthcare and for our company, this has been an evolution, to be honest. My philanthropic giving has been personal my whole life. In fact, I think anonymous is better than not. And so just maybe 6 or 7 years ago, did we actually start merging it into a corporate philanthropy. And then when I really started, when that started happening more in Jackson Healthcare, I started talking to people like Eric Tanenblatt and others to find out what other companies are doing. And from my standpoint, this has been a recent event for us. Eric probably can give us an idea because he's been dealing with this for over 20 years.
Mm. And what is, to your mind, Eric, what is the trend? Like, what is it?
Well, stepping back a second, I joined Denton's, but when I joined it here in Atlanta, it was Long, Aldridge, and Norman, which then became McKenna Long and Aldridge and is now Denton's. One of the things that attracted me to Long, Aldridge, and Norman some 16, 17 years ago was the fact that the firm had a commitment to giving back to the community. And you're seeing trends throughout the whole legal industry of firms getting more engaged, getting their partners and their lawyers and professionals at the firm involved in community activities. A great statistic, which someone told me recently, the head of our pro bono efforts, is that 10 years ago, if you look at the top 200 law firms in the United States, there were 24 full-time individuals that were focused on pro bono activities, 24 in the 200 firms. Fast forward today, there are 240 professionals that are involved in pro bono activities, leading pro bono activities in the top 100 firms. So that just shows you the trend throughout the legal industry that law firms are getting much more engaged and engaged in efforts beyond just traditional pro bono legal work. They're getting engaged in issues in the community. And at our firm, at Denton's, we're all about being in and of the community. As you said, we're the world's largest law firm. One of the things that I think differentiates us from other firms is that we're in and of the community. And we merged in firms over the last 5 years all over the globe that were prominent firms in their respective communities. So they have deep ties and roots to the communities. And the people that work at our firm are very engaged in the community and part of the community.
So tell us about Go Beyond Profit.
Well, Go Beyond Profit was an initiative, and it started with some of our positioning of Jackson Healthcare planning as to what we want to be when we grow up and what the future and so forth. And it was an idea basically to inspire and to encourage other companies as well as celebrate companies that are doing great things right now. Most people, there's such a culture right now of demonizing companies. And while I won't get into that, the most individuals don't see companies as good citizens and so forth. And after being introduced with Eric and understanding other companies, I was surprised of how much great things that companies are doing that most people don't know anything about. And so what we wanted to do, we did research to find out what kind of awards programs and so forth like that were going on for companies in this space. We could not find one that is similar to what we started. Ours is a leader-to-leader program. It is not driven by a nonprofit organization that just wants to give awards and so forth like that. And so what we wanted it to be is a leader-to-leader program to encourage other small and medium and some large companies to deepen their awareness and to grow in this space of giving back to the community. And we thought the best way to do that was to highlight what people are doing, to educate, and then eventually give awards for those that are excelling at this, as well as trying to teach people what the benefit of this is. I think most people, like myself, in the past, I didn't care about doing business just because they gave a pair of shoes away to somebody. I was looking for, a pair of shoes that I like.
Exactly.
I never done it. But I found out very recently I'm in a minority, and especially with the young people that are coming out now. And so while that's not the motivation for us to do it, there is a compelling ROI for companies to do this.
Eric, so what is your experience with building this ethos into the DNA of a business? So I can think of, law firms lawyers doing lawyering. And how is the firm that kind of has this ethos different from the firm that doesn't?
Well, I think it's number one, it's the right thing to do. I think it makes people appreciate coming to work every day to know that they're working in an environment and a culture that applauds this kind of effort. And one of the other unique things about the organization that I work for is, unlike a lot of not just law firms, but even some companies, they have very focused philanthropic efforts where they have specific projects that they want the employees to work on. We take the approach of work on things that you have passion for. So whether it's working on a program that deals with the arts, working with the disabled, or education programs, or housing, whatever your passion is, go ahead and do that. And we're going to support you in doing that. The other thing that, and it ties to some of the comments that Rick has made, we have found that partnering with our clients on civic activity has grown tremendously. So we find that we engage in activities or causes that our clients believe in, or that we together collectively identify opportunities and work together with them. For the past several years, we've been building Habitat for Humanity houses with several of our clients. And, to work on a project like that, outside of just the day-to-day grind of doing legal work for the client, but working and partnering on a project like that is very fulfilling. And I'll tell you something else, a benefit that we've, just recently we had an example of a lawyer in the firm working with a client on a project. And as a result of that, we actually got additional work from another part of the company unrelated to the lawyer we were working on, because the lawyer was boasting about, how great the firm was. And it wasn't just the legal work we were doing, it was the people and the culture at the firm. And I think that makes a big difference.
So Rick, you were just talking about the benefits. Talk to us about numbers. Like, what if we were going to try to do an ROI, and we have one hard-nosed CEO who's listening to the show, who's just like, okay, this all sounds really great, but why should I, from a hard dollars and cents standpoint, what does it look like in terms of dollars and cents?
Well, I can just tell you about our case, and then there's other people like Bernie Marcus that will tell you what it's done for Home Depot and so forth. So to me, this just kind of evolved. Again, like I said, I never decided to buy tires from somebody just because they give or not give or whatever. And so what I found out the first time, we ask all of the employees that come to work with us, their associates, but why did you decide to come here? And over the last 8 or 10 years, the giving back and charitable work we're doing is in the top 3 of every answer from anybody, and especially the younger people coming in, because they want to have be focused on more than just profit. They want to make a difference. They want to have a purpose and so forth. And so I found that out. We got a large contract several years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, with the hospital system. And they said the reason they chose us was because our charitable work. And we just barely showed it, a few things that we were doing on our website. So I was actually surprised by that. It still is not the motivator, but it does justify. And I will tell you, since we have, what our experience has been, we're in the service business, just like the law firm is. Turnover is the biggest cost of business.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to learn a skill that may take you a couple of years to understand the domain and so forth. So we had the lowest turnover in our space in the country, which allows us to grow on that base. If you have our industry, the staffing industry, probably has around 70 to 80% turnover every year. Ours is in the 15 to 17%. So we can grow from that base, because the only way you grow revenue.
Those are real numbers.
Yeah, I think so. Our profit margin has gone up significantly. Now, while I can't totally correlate that that's the reason, most of the people in our business do. And so, but the employee retention, that part of the business, the clients understanding that you care more than just money and so forth. There are a lot of people that matters to, and that has a bottom line impact on your business, especially people. When people go to work, instead of having a job and getting a paycheck, but they believe in your mission and what your purpose is, and they are involved in things that, as Eric says, that they're passionate about, not what the company's passionate about. I think that's a very good point. Then they tend to want to stay there, because anybody can have a job and work. You could work for another radio station, I guess, and I know you could. But if you care about what the company is doing, then you're going to stay there longer, because there's so many companies that don't and that should.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say there's a lot of literature that's been written on happiness and the impact that happiness has on the economy. And Arthur Brooks with the American Enterprise Institute has a book on happiness. There was a recent article in the Wall Street Journal on the topic. And if your employees are happy, it's going to make them more productive. They're going to want to come to work every day. Civic engagement, and for a company to be committed to their employees being engaged and giving back to their community makes them happy. And that's only good for the company. And I applaud Jackson Healthcare. They're an unbelievable place to work, because people, if you go to Jackson Healthcare and you walk around the hallways, people are happy there. And I think they've created a culture, and I hope to think we've created a culture at Denton's, where people are happy to be there because of the culture. And a big part of the culture is what you do in the community.
Great. So I have a question about like how you think about this whole kind of world. So you have your organization Go Beyond Profit. And one of the things that you do is you give awards. You try to highlight companies that are kind of have this ethos and are thinking this way. How do you think about who gets the award? Like, what is it that you're looking for? How do you measure it? How do you go about figuring out like who are the companies that are doing this the way that you think it should be done?
Well, we have basically 4 elements, and it's right out of our pledge. This is a part of our pledge, but there are 4 areas, and some people it started out as time, talent, and treasure, and culture. Mm-hmm. But basically that is, how much does a company give back, not only monetarily, but what's the impact? What's their mobilization, giving of their time, like Eric was talking about. And by the way, for some of us, giving our time is not a big deal, but I know how much they bill per hour, so it is a big deal. So, because attorneys and people in service industry, that's the only way they generate revenue. So it's real money from that standpoint, but that they generate their time. And I think, so the people that can utilize, we're in healthcare, we have telemedicine. I'll give you an example. And so we're one of the leaders in telemedicine providers. So we decided to use that and create something it's called Connecting Kids with Care, that around the world, we get doctors that will donate their time to look at medical records and people through video and other means to take care of poverty around the world. So we just used very expensive software to bring that together. And so those are things we already do. Eric mentioned about attorneys and so forth like that. So, to the extent that they use their current business. The other is that it's not only dollars. The only awards that we saw were people that were looking at public companies. I think the Boston Journal or somebody said, here's the top 20 dollar amounts of people giving. We believe that's just one element. I'm not even sure it's the most important element. So investing dollars is important. The other is becoming a part of the DNA of the company, and that is creating the culture. We started out just giving ourselves because we did not want to pressure our people to give. We're trying to lead them into wanting to be involved. And we moved from there that our leaders now, it's part of their 360 and their MBOs every year as to how much that they're focusing on this section of the business to include people and so forth. So we want to give people an opportunity. So those 4 areas of community impact, the time that's invested, the dollars that's invested, and then what about it in your culture? So somebody could give a lot of money, but if they didn't have it as part of if they're only using a foundation and that's all they're doing, and they don't have it a part of the management and culture of the business, they're not going to win an award. So these 4 elements are going to be what we're going to are the main criteria. And then we're going to get people like Eric and Frank Blake and other people, some of our ambassadors, to review. We're going to have applications review, and then we're going to pick people based on the size of their company. It has to be relevant. If you have 5 people in your company, you can't compete with Home Depot, and neither should you. But you can do what you can do. And so we want to encourage people to grow in this area, to understand the benefit to their company, as well as, giving back's good for the community, and we think good for Georgia.
All right, listeners, we're talking to Rick Jackson from Jackson Healthcare and Eric Tanenblatt. I want to make sure I say your name right. Tanenblatt, chair of Denton's U.S. Public Policy Practice, and also an ambassador for Go Beyond Profit. So one of the things that very much intrigues me about these kinds of conversations is we all know that it's really great. You have the largest law firm in the world, and you say, in the corner office in DC, like, we really want to have a great culture that instills, all these great values. And then all the way in China, right? Or, in California, there is some really miserable, unhappy, mean lawyer, right? Like, that's just the way of the world. And so
in every city.
Right. So one of the things that intrigues me, that I ask a lot on the show when this comes up, is how do you think about the gap between the aspirations and what you hope to be the culture and like what's really happening? And how do you think about that? And how do you understand like where the gap is?
Well, you have to practice what you preach. You can't just, you want to be aspirational, but one of the things that I mentioned earlier that's unique about our firm is that we're in and of the community. So the assemblage of law firms that now make up Denton's are all people with deep ties to the community. And if the culture of the organization is such that it promotes and encourages engagement in the community, if that's not something that you want to do, you're going to not fit in. And that's not to say that every single person in our firm is, engaged like everyone else. I mean, it's to different degrees. Some people are more engaged than others, but if it's something that is embedded in your culture, you're either going to find it to be a compatible place to work or not. And we're finding more and more that it's important to all of the people that work in our organization. And in particular, the younger generation, millennials, that's one of the things I've started to see as I've interviewed new lawyers and professionals coming into the firm, that they are actually asking, what is it that you do or the firm does for the community? And what would I be able to do? So that's now becoming a criteria when people are looking for firms to come to, is that they want to go to an organization that actually encourages engagement in the community. And I find that to be very inspiring.
Go ahead, Rick. You've been chomping at the bit. You want to answer this one? Go ahead.
Well, now, there's 3 basics for our company of managing any objective. It's expect, inspect, and feedback. people don't do what you expect; they do what you inspect, and then giving them feedback. We went to the next level that in our managers and leaders, it's expected now. That this is something that we've crossed a chasm that we never had that before. It was just more aspirational and so forth like that. And so it's an expectation, a goal every year by every manager. We do inspect, meaning
what's the amount of community involvement,
community involvement, the 360 as to how our associates rate our giving back, what level of activity. In other words, do you agree that this company is charitable and as part of the DNA, those kind of things. So we do a lot of feedback loops to find out if it's part of that. So when we just got something in the Fortune magazine where talking about giving back. Well, when they externally interview your people and ask you about this issue and rank it with other companies, that's a feedback loop. So to me, it needs to be not only led by example, and that's what we've done probably until about 2 or 3 years ago. But now we've seen such a benefit of it and such that we want to make sure that it's the fabric, that we expect it, we inspect it, and then we give feedback to make sure that it's actually happening at as many levels as we can.
And, we actually do that too. I should have mentioned that, we track, Rick was, made a joke about billable hours, but, we track the time that people at our firm are working on what client matters, but we also track the pro bono hours and the community service hours because it's something that, we have a requirement. People have a minimum requirement as to what they should be doing. And then some people exceed that requirement, and we actually celebrate that. And, while we're talking about awards for Go Beyond Profit, if you walk around our firm outside everyone's nameplate, when someone hits their goal, they get a little award sticker that's right next to their nameplate, and we celebrate it.
Great. So what do you think the future of this movement is? I know in our earlier conversations, you both said that you want this to become the norm, the way that all businesses think about being in business. What do you think is the future of what you're doing?
Well, I've started a lot of businesses, and this is a startup. And so we, in a few short months, we have over 220 people that signed the pledge. We have some of the world's leading ambassadors and so forth. So we're off to a good start. But what we want it to be is where we have thousands and thousands of companies that sign the pledge, that get involved in the content, that look at inspiring videos. We just recently put on our website a 15-minute TED Talk kind of a approach with Bernie Marcus that I think is an instant classic. I think it will survive the next 20 years of inspiration to show how it happened at Home Depot. Because when I interviewed Bernie about this concept, he gave me a lot of feedback. But then I asked him, I said, when did it start for you guys? And he's talked about, things that starting in the early 90s. Well, I didn't even hear of corporate philanthropy back then. Again, I thought philanthropy was a personal thing, but he was already doing it, and they were already doing it. And as you, please go to our website because you'll love this. If you like corporate philanthropy and want to see the best of the best, I think Bernie Marcus is one of the pioneers in this concept. So we want people to see that, see the benefit, understand that they may not know where to go volunteer. Small companies don't have a community service person on their staff because they're so small. We want to be an outlet for if you want to do certain kind of volunteer and so forth like that. This is how you can get engaged to give everybody an opportunity. So we want it to become a large initiative. And once we start giving awards and they start meaning things, we have to create value for our customers. Our customers are people wanting to join. And the way we create value to grow this is to highlight who they are, social media, awards, those kind of things, and then giving them information that they can't have when they're smaller or don't have now. So we want it to become very large. I think Eric has some pretty big dreams on that as well.
Yeah, I think Go Beyond Profit is a movement. And, we're here in Georgia, and Georgia has a deep history in volunteerism and service. And there have been these movements, one of the most prominent volunteer organizations in the city of Atlanta is Hands on Atlanta, that started in someone's apartment and then moved on to becoming a national and now international organization, and is tied to Points of Light. Many years ago, I was on the Hands on Atlanta board. And as a result of that, Michelle Nunn and I started something called Hands on Georgia, to take what Hands on Atlanta did in Atlanta to communities all across Georgia. And there were some 17 organizations that were birthed out of that, similar to Hands on Atlanta. What Go Beyond Profit is doing is it's celebrating companies that are already doing this, but it's creating a movement that you're going to get other companies that may not be doing as much that are going to start to do more, and you're going to celebrate them. And then over time, just like what started in that apartment with Hands on Atlanta, you're going to find in the corporate community that it's going to just become the norm and part of what happens throughout businesses in Georgia. There's a lot already happening, but I think there's a lot more. And one other point I should make too is I think, and I see this from with regards to hiring people. A lot of young people today are taking, when they graduate college, some are going into the Peace Corps, or becoming AmeriCorps members, or taking a gap year in volunteering, or serving in the military. Well, when employers have two job candidates that they're looking at to hire a job, it should be looked at if someone took a year or 2 years and dedicated it to service for someone who didn't, that they should give some preference to the person that dedicated to service. And I think over time, that's going to make a dramatic change in the way that our whole society views service. And Go Beyond Profit is just one piece of it.
So what's kind of new and exciting at Go Beyond Profit that people might be able to be latch on to immediately or get involved in right away? Any events or anything like that?
Well, the next phase, I mentioned one of them, for company CEOs that are even thinking about this and wondering, why should I get involved and so forth? We'd love for them to go see the 15-minute version of Bernie Marcus. Like I said, it's an instant classic. So that, to me, that's new and exciting, just to document that. We also are videotaping other people. For instance, and then we'll start at the second half of this year giving out awards based under certain companies' excellence and so forth. And we're going to do awards differently for CEOs that are out there. I had one CEO, I won't mention his name, that said that he was always asked to, say, we want to honor you. And by the way, will you buy $500,000 worth of tables, for the event? And so we initially thought this and dismissed it. We're not going to have an awards banquet. What we're going to do is select somebody like Business X Radio and say, we want to come to your office, we want to do a press release, and we want to present the trophy and the information to you and your associates because it's for you. And then we'll, obviously try to make it from there. But we'll also give them a video, a professional video that's by Lori Geary, who used to be at WSB Anchor, to interview the company and talk about the things they're doing and so forth. So we'll give that as a donation to their company to encourage them so that they can use any way that they want to. So that will start in the second half. And right now we're in the phase of let's get several hundred people involved, and then we'll start taking applications and go from there.
The other thing I would add too, though, is you can go to the Go Beyond Profit website, and there's actually stories about what companies that have already taken the pledge, what they're doing. And I think for companies that want to learn, we want to share best practices, and we want Go Beyond Profit to also be an opportunity for companies to learn how to engage their employees and to help them, and so that they're posted on the website someday and they win an award someday.
Awesome. All right, listeners, we've been talking to Rick Jackson from Jackson Healthcare and Eric Tanenblatt from Denton's about going beyond profit. You've been listening to CEO Exclusive. I'm your host, Soyini Koch, and I hope you have a profitable, productive, and very prosperous week. Thanks.
This show is brought to you by Anona Enterprises, where strategy is your access to money and performance. Learn more at AnonaEnterprises.com.